almost. I have spent some time just trying to catch up sleep. You can't catch up sleep. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, I'd try to lay there, and I'd wake up tireder than I was when I laid down, because you can't just veg. You hear what I'm saying? How many of you know what I'm talking about? You've laid there long enough, you vegged out. You were trying to rest, but the rest wasn't there. And so while you may have slept and your body may have been somewhat renewed, something was still missing. And what the Lord has spoken to my heart, and what I want to tell you this morning, that I honestly believe is a word from God. The key to us getting the rest that He's talking about here, and I can back it up in a minute, and I will, is that we come with Him. He's the rest. He's what we need. See, this word, simply defined, means refreshment. Well, that actually means a cessation. You stop something. So you still your soul. See, the Lord said, be still and know that I'm God. See, it's not just to quit, not just to stop doing anything, but it's to be still and know that He's God. And the key to us being able to be refreshed, the key to us being able to find the rest that He's talking about, which is what the Sabbath was all about. See, it's not about, the Sabbath is about genuine rest. As a matter of fact, the Greek word for Sabbath is rest. That's what it means. And so, we get it all mixed up with our religious selves, trying to make rules and regulations and all this stuff that we got to do and can't do. And then you get so paranoid you can't get it all right. But what He wants us to do, Jesus is our rest. And so what He wants us to do is not just sleep, not just rest for our bodies. He wants rest for our soul. He wants rest for our spirit. And that's a refreshment. What's interesting, W. Vine has done wonderful study, got a book that I get a lot of definitions out of. Here's what Vine says about this particular word. Christ's rest is not a rest from work. Hear that. Hear me. It's not a rest from work, but in work. Now, then he goes on to qualify this with a statement from J. Patrick. It says, not the rest of inactivity, but the harmonious working of all the faculties and affections of will, heart, imagination, conscience, because each has found in God the ideal sphere for its satisfaction and development. Now, that's a mouthful and a lot of words, but hear me again. Here's the quote. This is a quote from J. Patrick in Vine's dictionary. It said, not rest of inactivity. We're not talking about a rest from work. We're talking about a rest in work, in the midst of it. Okay? But it's a harmonious working. In other words, working together in harmony. All of faculties and affections of our will, which is basically your soul, of our heart, imagination, and conscience. Because each of these, our will, our heart, our imagination, our conscience, has found in God, who is our rest, the ideal sphere for its satisfaction and development. Now that's a mouthful. And if we can get a hold of that, we can be sustained. Listen, you are an eternal creature. Every one of us are going to live. I don't care whether every human will live eternally. Once you're born, it doesn't stop. And so what He wants us to do is, I want to be geared up for the whole thing. Now, I can't even think in terms of eternity. It's almost impossible for me to think in terms of it, because we're so time restricted in this mortal body. But what He wants you to understand is, your body's young and strong and going good and all of that. No gray. You got all your hair. I'm missing a few. I tell y'all have heard me say it before. I'm getting thinner here and thicker here. If I could reverse that, it'd be good. But I might can get thinner here, but I don't know that I'll ever get thicker here. But what I'm saying is, He wants us to learn to be in this forever. See? And now He's going to have to give me a new body to be able to sustain that, and aren't you grateful for that? We know it's coming, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the one I got. But it won't hurt my feelings to trade it in on another one, and that's going to come. But what I want us to understand is that we can find our development. We can find what He's called us to do. We can find our satisfaction. That's the rest He's talking about. That's what Sabbath is all about. That's what worship is all about. That's what the Word is all about. And that's what He wants us to find to be able to sustain it. Because I tell you, it can get wearisome trying to live a Christian life. It can get wearisome trying to help people that are hurting. It can get wearisome. I mean, the poor you will have with you always. There's always somebody going to be knocking on the door. There's always somebody needs some gas, needs some food, needs some help, and But what we need to do is come with Him, is what He said. He told His disciples, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So if you want to be most effective, don't get up with the alarm clock blaring and run, take your shower quick, or comb your hair, brush your teeth, or whatever you do. Some of you take your showers at night. Some of you take them in the morning. I know that. Exactly, and some of you a little OCD, but that's all right. But anyway, and so you just go. But if you going, and the next thing you know is you fall down and your gift slam out, and you hadn't had devotional time, you haven't had some God time, you haven't been able to find your purpose for that day, you're just caught up in whatever task it is that's in front of you. And the work is fine. It's good. It's good to work. You need to work. The Bible says if you don't work, you don't eat. And I'm going to keep right on working because I'm going to keep right on eating. So, but what we've got to do is find a place of devotion for the Lord. And I ain't trying to put a trip on you. I don't care whether you get your quiet time at night, midday, morning. Daniel did it 3 times a day. And he wasn't OCD. So, all right. So, but I want you to hear my heart. If you're in this thing for the long haul, you're in this thing till He calls us home, and then we're going to be with Him forever. And so we need to learn how to work it the way He worked it. And He told His disciples, and that come with me is the key thing. I should have called this, come with me. And so, but He said, come with me by yourselves without any kind of distractions to a quiet place. Cut off the television. Cut off the boombox. Cut off the phone. Please. The computers. And find a place where you can meet God because He is your rest. All right? He goes on. Now watch this now. They went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them, ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Now they're going trying to get some rest, and what happens? Everything follows them. The ministry follows them. They got stuff to do. They're people in need. These are hurting people. All right, when Jesus landed, now they got there ahead of them. I don't know how in the world you can. It's amazing how the gossip mill runs so quickly. And these guys were in a boat, and they ran on foot and beat them to where they were going. All right? But look at Jesus, look at Christ's reaction. Watch this now, hear me. When Christ landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So what did he do? What's the very next word? So in my Bible, S-O. What did he do? What does it say? He began teaching them many things. So, all right, I'll summarize in a minute. By this time, it was late in the day. Okay? And his disciples came to him and they said, this is a remote place. It's already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy them something to eat. And here's what he said to them. Now, these guys are worn slam out. They're trying to get away. They got to the place that they were trying to get to, and all the people are there. And you know what he told them? You feed them. I'm thinking, huh? And that's what they said. Now, that's the Beaver Dam translation. They said, huh? They said it'd take 8 months' wages to feed this crowd, and I'm broke. I'm a preacher. Are you kidding me? And so he said, well, what you got? What do you have? Well, now I would imagine with 5,000 men in that crowd, there was a little bit more than 2 ham sandwiches, well, no ham, 2 calf sandwiches and a couple of loaves of bread. But nobody was coming forth with it. You understand that, don't you? Okay. But this little boy had, 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And so he told the disciples, this is amazing to me. He said, all right, gather the people around. He got the 12 out there telling over 5,000. Some estimated it was over 15,000 people there. He said, get them in groups. And the disciples did it. I mean, I reckon they figured this. What else am I going to do? What are we going to do with these people? And he starts breaking this bread. Y'all, it took them, I think they had way more when they got through than they had when they started, because he is the source of our rest and he is the source of our work. Do you hear me? You just do what he tells you to do and you're going to be fine. Now, that's hard for me to do because sometimes I think I got this thing figured out. I mean, I'm a smart dude, I mean, I made good grades in school. All we've got to do is what he tells us to do. But we need to be listening to him. So this rest business is really important. Okay? This refreshment, this listening, this cessation of our activity is important. So he goes on. Now, I want you to pick it up back in verse 45. He fed the 5,000 men. And verse 45 says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. He sent them all away. He said, y'all go ahead. After leaving them, what did he do? Somebody tell me loud. Somebody speak up. He went to a mountainside to pray. Now, if Jesus needs to pull away and quit doing all the stuff and pray, what you think about Willard? Willard might better be praying. What you think about you? And so, now it's very interesting. This chapter is so amazing to me. He just walks right on past them, and they all freak out because he's walking on the water. And I would have been freaking out if I'd have seen him walking on the water. But it's just interesting that they do. And at the end of this chapter, they gather together and they go into there's so many people, that everywhere they're touching him, and everybody that touched him got healed. But the point that I'm really trying to make out of this is that he began to teach them, and he was called to pray. We need the word, and we need prayer. And that's not all we need. Let's go to Matthew 11. Matthew 11. Very familiar passage of Scripture. But I want you to look at it, because sometimes we get so familiar with the word that we miss some of the nuggets that are there. Because the word is alive, and it'll speak to you right now if you listen. Matthew 11. All right, he's been preaching. John the Baptist has been talked about. He's talking and giving warnings to some of the unrepentant cities, and in verse 25, Matthew 11:25. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you've hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this was your good pleasure. He speaks to children. He speaks to those that are unlearned and unwise. And he ministers life to any who will listen to him. Look at verse 27. And we're going to hit this next week pretty hard. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Now, next week I'm going to talk to you a lot about knowing God. But right now I just want to register that point that if you want to know God, you've got to know Christ. And you got to let him speak in your heart. Okay? Now, he goes on, and this is a famous passage. Many of you have this on your wall at home. This is such an important passage to me. Matthew 11:28 and 29 and 30. Look at it. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I'll give you rest. Same word. Cessation, refreshment, rest. Same definition. He said, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden's light. Probably 46 years ago, had a friend, we were talking about this passage, he wrote a song about it. He said a yoke, and part of the song said a yoke is still a yoke. You got to put it on. Now, what I'm thankful for is that on the other side of that yoke is Christ. And he can carry you when you can't do it. He can walk with you when you can't do it. And if we will listen to him and rest in him and receive him as our rest, he'll give us the strength to go forward and do every single thing that he's called us to do. Heather Henson came to me the other day. I saw Heather, and I looked at her, and she looked exhausted. I said, Heather, you all right? She said, yeah. And she started telling me some of the stuff that had happened at work. And they almost lost a patient, and she was feeling the weight of all of that, and just tired and working and overworked. And our healthcare workers are way overstaffed because understaffed. Thank you, and you're right, understaffed. And I thought, man, you got to. And she went to the altar Sunday to touch Jesus. And I will have to say, you look a whole lot more rested today. But y'all, it's real. This struggle is real. And life is tough. And we've got to understand how to connect with Him, because He's eternal and He is strong and He is everything we need. And He also is available. Now, summarizing, and I know y'all are in shock, but summarizing, here's what I want you to see. In this passage, He said, come. Now, that's really simple. And it's entirely up to you. He does not drag you here. He does not drag you into His presence. He is available, but He said, come. He said, come to me. That's what He told His disciples. He said, come with me. Okay? So He said, come. And then He said, take my yoke. Again, He does not make you take it. It's available. Now, you got to understand that this yoke, by definition, is an implement of work. So that's what I'm saying. This rest is not a rest from work. It's a rest in work. And the peace of God sustains you and it moves you. So we can come, and that's voluntary. We can take, and that's voluntary. And then He said, learn. Learn from me. So here's what I'm saying, plain and simple. And Becky, you can come on. We're getting ready to have our invitation. It's up to you. His rest is there. His grace is enough. It really is sufficient. Every one of us have faced situations where we thought, Lord, where are you? Well, He's right there. Every one of us have faced situations where we felt like He was distant or we had gone from Him. He's right there. The Scripture says, and He is not a man that He should lie. He said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And so what my invitation here today is really simple. You can come. You can take His yoke. You can learn of Him. You can come to Him. You can take His yoke. You can learn of Him. And He will give you what you need in the refreshment and the rest that is inherent in who He is. Because Hebrews says He is our rest. And so what I want us to do is be equipped for the marathon. Whole different training for a sprint than a marathon. You can't hold out wide open all the time. And y'all know about the tortoise and the hare and the whole 9 yards. I mean, listen, we're in this thing forever. And we need to know how to receive from Him the strength to do what He's called us to do. And you say, I can't do that. You're exactly right. You cannot. But He can. That's why the invitation is, come to me, take my yoke, learn of me. Is what He said. Now, I've talked enough. Stand with me. If the Lord's dealing with you about anything, why don't you just bring it to this altar? I'll gladly pray with anybody that wants me to. But I'm opening up this altar as an act of faith for you to come and let the Lord speak to your heart and for you to receive the rest which brings the strength, which brings the refreshment, which brings the ability to go forward to do what He's called you to do, no matter what it is. And let me encourage you, do what He tells you to do. What's our song? 277. The altar's open. Come as you choose.